Welcome to the annual meeting of the City of York Council. Lady Mayoress, Sheriff Consort, members of the Council, Honorary Aldermen, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. The first item on the agenda, Councillor Chris Stewart will propose a motion for the nomination of Lord Mayor. Councillor Stewart.
Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Sheriff's Consort, Honorary Aldermen, Honorary Alderwomen, members, distinguished guests. It's a huge honour for me to propose Councillor Margaret Wells to be the next Lord Mayor of York. It's a great privilege to propose such a good and popular councillor to this crucial role. It may sound a cliché, but I passionately believe this is the finest city in the finest county in the finest land. I also thought, well, it's great to be proposing rather than seconding, as it means I don't have to worry about saying what's not been said. However, I was still long far away from thinking about my speech before the seconder speech was emailed to me, and I faced a tricky job of ensuring no duplication. I therefore initially wondered about a different tack for the speech. Neither Margaret or I are great with technology, so I thought I would bring the ancient office of Lord Mayor of York, which dates back 635 years, and the office of Mayor of York, which dates back 800 years into the modern age. Yes, I decided to see what artificial intelligence would think and ChatGPT would be like in writing a speech. It came up with the following. You step into this esteemed position with a wealth of experience, a deep understanding of our city's needs and a clear vision for its future. Your dedication to public service and to improve the lives of our citizens has already made a significant impact. Today we recognise and celebrate your commitment to leading us forward. However, I didn't tell ChatGPT Margaret's name or the city she was representing, so it did feel a tad impersonal. Then I thought that in the political world, Margaret had not been the first Margaret that I had been a big fan and respecter of. I therefore thought, what could I say that the more controversial Margaret might have said, who had been so dominant in the 1980s. And after some negotiation and leaving a hefty deposit, Councillor Healy let me borrow his book of 101 best Margaret Thatcher quotes. I began reading, and I found some brilliant quotes. However, I was aware that although Margaret Thatcher quotes may appeal to me, it was a Labour majority council, and the numbers game didn't sound particularly good, with 24 councillors for Labour fighting 3 councillors for the Conservatives, and nor was it a particularly seemly event for annual council. Pleasingly, though, I was able to find a suitable quote that Margaret Thatcher said. And she said, if you want something saying, ask a man. If you want something doing, ask a woman. And this for me is a superb quote about our new Lord Mayor, who is absolutely not a hot air and waffle politician, but a worker and a doer and a voice of sense. Indeed, far from being an unnecessary talker, one activity Margaret has been involved in over the years has been the listening as a Samaritan's volunteer, and I struggle to think of a more worthy way to spend time and a better marker of a person. I would like to say a few words about our new Lord Mayor's consort, Paul. This is slightly complicated by never having spoken to him. People that know me well are aware that I'm a man of few words. And I would certainly hate to ever speak about something I don't know all about. However, I was given information on Paul which confirmed him to be a man of the greatest intellect, judgment and sense, and I, for one, would be the first ever person, if you needed, to give him a character reference. Yes, he is a Leeds United fan. Hopefully he will find the ceremony this morning as good as watching Leeds thrash Norwich last week, with goals from Gruev, Pirro, Rutter and Somerville. As I hope you'll all be aware, on Sunday Leeds United will be in the playoffs final at Wembley to play Southampton, and it is now every single York fan's loyal duty to support Leeds United. If not, I trust the Lord Mayor will find punishments about towers and bars and gates and stringing people up. Margaret is absolutely a York person, with both sets of grandparents living in the city, and was brought up in a strong and supportive family, and more than did the same for her children. You'll hear more about her family in the second speech. She was elected on the 7th of May 2015, which fantastically was not only her birthday, but that of her Clifton Ward colleague, Councillor Myers. I don't know which of them is older. The celebrations were probably hindered, though, as a Conservative Lib Dem coalition took form across the city. But things have moved on since, and we now have a female council leader. We have a female Lord Mayor, and we're going to have a female Lord Mayor, and we're going to have a female Sheriff. So in York, it really is the case that behind every successful woman is another woman, and behind them is another woman. Away from the stress of politics, Margaret also, like Paul, enjoys football, and she's a big rugby league fan. She also went to Scarborough Cricket Festival when she was young, where her brother told her, "You don't go to county cricket matches to enjoy them, you go to show your stamina." That's maybe one thing that we could work on, Margaret, because a day watching cricket in Scarborough, fishing chips, a cold Tetleys, there is no better way to spend time. And maybe York should get a few runs, and they used to win games occasionally, but maybe not. For something more tranquil, she's a keen knitter. Indeed, she once knitted a miniature zoo for her grandchildren, which included toadstool houses, icebergs and dinosaurs, as that's what the children thought should be in a zoo. And as all councillors can testify, you have to keep the children happy because they are your future. Leafleters. On a similarly tranquil theme, Margaret also has a keen interest in history, whether her own family tree or the world around her. And as we all know, she could have picked no better place than York to live and enjoy history, and no better way to see more of it than a year as Lord Mayor. The role of Lord Mayor remains a huge one, and whilst other places have Lord Mayors, many rightly look enviously at the civic office and history of the role of York's first citizen, second only to standing in a similar role in some place called London. There will be so many big events and ceremonies ahead: dinners, the crucial remembrance event, and marking 80 years since D-Day. There will be fetes and openings of new buildings. There will, of course, be the joys of chairing full council. However, for many, the best thing about the role will be meeting people, and I'm sure Margaret will enjoy that side as much as anything. In an email, she told me what she enjoyed most about being a councillor, and I'll read a paragraph in full, as I don't think anyone could sum up better the positive side of a councillor and what will be the makings of Margaret as a great Lord Mayor. Margaret said, "One of the things I love most about being a councillor is the people I have met, the stories they have told me and the difference they have made to people's lives, often without even realising it, and this is really what I'm looking forward to most about being Lord Mayor, celebrating and thanking them for their often unsung, unnoticed contributions they bring to York. It's therefore a great pleasure for me to formally propose Councillor Margaret Wells as the new Lord Mayor of York, and I hope her and Paul go marching on together into a fun-filled and interesting year."
Thank you very much, Councillor Stewart, and Councillor Sam Warby will now will second the motion. Thank you. Councillor Warby.
Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Sheriff, Sheriff's Consort, Councillors, Honorary Aldermen, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. When Margaret asked me to second her to become Lord Mayor, I can't express how honoured and privileged I felt. I then met Margaret for a coffee to have a chat and find out a bit about her, and the stories were hilarious. We didn't stop laughing the whole time. Margaret tries to approach life with humour and understanding. She isn't afraid of laughing at herself or getting her hands dirty to help. Margaret was born at home in Acomb on Cup Final Day, and her dad, who couldn't listen to the match on the radio, said she'd been awkward ever since. In case anyone is interested, Wolverhampton Wanderers beat Blackburn Rovers 3-0. Margaret has lived in York all her life. She is the second of 3 children. Helen is married to Trevor, who will be her chaplain. John is her younger brother. He lives in the USA with his wife and daughter. She also has a special cousin, Jean, who was in and is a huge part of their family. She calls her sis. She went on family holidays with them. Margaret has 2 children, Heather, who married Gareth. They have 2 daughters, Cora and Agnes, and David, whose partner is Gemma. Margaret wanted her children to go to university and didn't want them to turn to her and say, "You don't know what you're on about, the pressures of studying." So after David, the youngest child, was born, she enrolled on an access course and then went on to University of York, where she studied social policy. It was hard juggling a family, home and studies, and one of David's first words was, "Shh, essay," but it was worthwhile. After graduating, Margaret worked at the local government ombudsman's office before getting a job with Hugh Bailey, who was the MP. Margaret now works for Rachel Maskell. Margaret has always wanted to do more to help people, and she has a lot of compassion and empathy for people who are struggling. While at university, she trained and worked as a Samaritan. The training came in useful when she received a host call at home at 4 a.m. from a gentleman intent on making provocative remarks to her. Margaret's training kicked in, and she offered open-minded, non-judgmental support, inquiring calmly and with great and persistent concern about his mental well-being, signposting services that could help him further during a crisis like this. Sadly, on this occasion, her support was not required. The caller told her she was a weirdo and hung up. But as one of her friends said when she told her the tale, "I know many of us who have worked with you over the years have been lucky enough to receive her support without needing to call her at 4 a.m, and your patience, open-mindedness and compassion have been a gift." Margaret always believed that you shouldn't moan when things go wrong, but you should do something about it. People do their best, and if you think you can do better, go ahead. So in 2015, she was elected to the council representing Clifton. Margaret used to be the proud mother of 2 little dogs. She used the term mother because they were 2 dogs who thought they were people. She would throw a ball for them, and they sat down and watched as she ran after it and brought it back. She would get them ready for a walk, get to the front door, and they would look out, and if it was cold or wet, they would just sit there as if to say, "We're not going out in that." Life became more complicated with COVID, and during one of the lockdowns, Margaret had a stroke, which made things a little more difficult. When it happened, she was in bed and she couldn't move properly and thought she'd been laid funny. Margaret went downstairs on her bottom, and halfway down, she just burst out laughing because it was all right coming downstairs, but what would happen when she needed to get back up? She was also worried when they called an ambulance in case nothing was wrong with her and she had just been laid funny. Margaret didn't want to waste people's time. Margaret was determined to get better as quickly as possible and would only eat using her bad hand. She spent most of the time laughing because her arm didn't work and she had to follow it with her mouth and frequently ended up with her head chasing her fork. Food was often cold. Margaret had similar problems trying to take a photo of her ID with her phone. She ended up with loads of photos of her table, the floor, her knees and feet, but she laughed her way well. It was during lockdown that Paul and Margaret decided to marry. They had found each other later on in life. They both had grown-up children and had been living together for several years. Margaret thinks the stroke was a wake-up call for both of them. So between them, they are now the proud parents of 5 children and their partners, as well as the 6 grandchildren who keep them on their toes. Paul's family live in Leeds area. Some things caused her problems. Margaret used to lock up an office every now and again and have to set the alarm. No one told her they had changed the doors, and it worked on a sensor. But this was a new concept, so when she went to lock it, it just opened before she could get the key in. She was stood in the street laughing, and then she tried hiding at the side of the door and leaning in when it closed to try and get the key in. That didn't work, so she laid on the pavement and tried doing it that way. in the end, Margaret worked out. If she stuck her head next to the door, it would hit her head, close, and it gave her just enough time to lock it. She's not sure if anyone ever checked the CCTV, but it would have been amusing. Family is very important to her, and she can't think of anything better than when they are all together laughing and joking. Margaret loves rugby league. She used to be a season ticket holder for the Knights and went to all the home and away games. She used to go with her dad. Sadly, though, since her stroke, she hasn't really been able to get there. But she listens on the radio and watches the live feed on Facebook. Paul is a keen sports fan too. He supports Leeds Rhinos and is an avid follower of Leeds United, much to Margaret's amusement. So she guesses he's used to disappointment. Margaret, it gives me the greatest pleasure to second you as Lord Mayor, and I hope you enjoy every moment of your year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wardby. So we come to the vote. Can I ask all those in favour of the motion, please show by raising your hands. I'm confident that is unanimous. I declare the motion carried and Councillor Margaret Wells has been elected as Lord Mayor of the City of York for the municipal year 2024-2025. Congratulations.
The Lady Mayoress and the Lord Mayor's Consort will now exchange the chains of office. The Lord Mayor, Councillor Margaret Wells, will now make a declaration of acceptance of office.
I, Margaret Wells, having been elected to the office of Lord Mayor of the City of York, hereby declare that I take the said office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties thereof, according to the best of my judgment and ability.
The Lord Mayor will now take the oath of allegiance.
I, Margaret Wells, Lord Mayor of the City of York, do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God. Lord Mayor's Consort, Sheriff's Consort, members of the Council, Honorary Aldermen, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and young people. First of all, I should like to thank Councillors Stewart and Wardby for their speeches and for managing to find something nice to say about me. I want to thank the retiring Civic Party for all their work in the previous year, championing our city, and on a personal note for their help and advice, which I hope will continue through the coming months. I want to thank my friends and family for all their support, particularly over the last few years, and to Paul, my consort, who never realised he'd be signing up for this. I'm particularly pleased to welcome today two of our grandchildren, Cora and Agnes, and also Fiona's grandson, Theo. I'm hoping it's not been too boring so far. It goes without saying, I'm grateful and thankful to Councillor Danny Myers, my Clifton Ward partner. So I won't say anything, Danny. But thank you as well, all members of the Council, for your support and trust. It is appreciated. One of the things I and the rest of the new Civic Party are keen to do this year is to celebrate local people and the community groups that make York the wonderful city it is. So please, let us know what's going on in your ward so we can drop in and chat with some of your residents. I also want to thank officers who have helped me navigate the council system. I'd particularly like to thank Dawn Steels, who is retiring today. For those of you who don't know Dawn, she's been patiently advising and keeping an eye on councillors for over 25 years, as well as managing expectations. Not an easy job. Dawn, we all wish you a very happy and very well-deserved early retirement. At this point, I'd like to introduce a few people. My brother-in-law, Trev the Rev, who will be our chaplain for the year. And also some of the people representing the Lord Mayor's charity. Stuart, from the Stroke Association. Mags, from Survive. Paula, from York City Foundation. And Neil, from the Knights Foundation. Please talk to them later about the work their charities do. They are all inspirational and passionate about the work. Finally, you'll be pleased, as a York born and bred woman who never in her wildest dreams thought she'd be sitting here, when at the age of 3 she was sat on her father's shoulders waving flags as the Lord Mayor's parade went past. I hope you will forgive and indulge me when I end by paraphrasing a quote from one of my heroes, Keir Hardie. It is a privilege to be chosen for the position which I now accept, along with the responsibilities that go with it. I do so with humility and compassion to serve the people of this great city. Thank you. We now move to item 3 of the agenda, the ceremony for appointment of Sheriff of York. Councillor Martin Rowley will now propose a motion for the appointment of Sheriff.
Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor's Consort, Sheriff Consort, Honorary Alderman and Honorary Alderwoman, members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. When I looked at the weather forecast this morning and it was forecast for torrential rain, I thought about asking for the podium to be moved outside. but as the rain clearly hasn't happened, we're rightly inside the Guildhall. There's a very well-known phrase which states, if you want something doing, then ask a busy person. This phrase is absolutely typified in Fiona. Although she was an immigrant to Yorkshire from that there London, she has dedicated her life in the service of others, and York and its residents have been a major recipient of that service. Fiona's lived in York for the last 20 years. She worked across Hull schools as a consultant for the National Strategies Programme to raise school standards. She's been a local authority advisor for inclusion and an Ofsted inspector for schools. I've been a school governor for 31 years now. I know how tough Ofsted inspecting can be, and I know how tough Ofsted inspectors can be. She's always worked in schools in challenging circumstances, striving to improve the life chances of those less fortunate. She's also taught in schools in London, Liverpool, Milton Keynes and Hull. Fiona was my local councillor when I lived in the Hull Road ward, and when I set my business up in the Guildhall ward, she was again our local councillor. She was as committed to businesses in her ward as she was to residents. She was one of those rare breed of politicians who, if they said they would do it, actually did it. Regular visits from Fiona to our business premises were a highlight, and one that I'm glad to say her successor, Councillor Merritt, has continued. Fiona lives in Warmgate, an area where relatives of hers moved to as economic migrants from the west of Ireland in the last century. Fiona is very proud of her Irish heritage, belonging to the York Irish Society and supporting many of their events. I now see where that tenacious, can-do spirit comes from. Fiona has been a trustee of Red Tower, helping to provide food and companionship to those in need in the local area. I've been privileged to work with Fiona on a number of committees of the City of York Council over the last 6 years, the most notable of these being SACRE. That's the Standard Advisory Committee on Religious Education. Fiona is comfortable with all faiths and none, and she has been a particular help to York Mosque in recent years. Fiona loves living in the city centre, enjoying its coffee shops, bars and restaurants. She's a big live music fan, whether it be Irish music at the Golden Ball, reggae at the Crescent, or Van Morrison at the Barbican. I'm sure she'll enjoy the live carol concert at the Barbican in December. Fiona is well known and respected, as I said earlier, by business owners and residents alike, particularly in the city centre, where she's regularly stopped to chat, something that makes campaigning twice as long with her Labour colleagues. In closing, I know that the city will be in good hands, and that as the King's representative, Fiona as Sheriff will demonstrate all the diplomacy, dedication, devotion and people skills that she has shown so wonderfully over her years of service. And so it is my honour to propose my good friend Fiona Fitzpatrick to be the Sheriff of York for the municipal year 2024-2025.
Councillor Stephen Fenton will now second the motion.
Lord Mayor, Lady Mayoress, Sheriff, Sheriff's Consort, Honorary Aldermen, members and guests. I'm delighted to be able to second the nomination of Fiona Fitzpatrick as Sheriff of York for the municipal year 2024-25. Between 2019 and 2023, I was pleased to have had the opportunity to work with Fiona on council scrutiny committees on issues including food poverty and access to community support for those in need. Fiona brought her wealth of knowledge and experience to this work, and her colleagues, including me, benefited from her extensive contacts, such as at Red Tower, where she was a trustee. More importantly, Fiona was willing to roll her sleeves up and put in the effort needed to get the most out of cross-party scrutiny and policy development work. Fiona is a hard worker, and that's something that I know she will bring to the role of Sheriff. Fiona's real passion has always been to promote equality, diversity and inclusion in York. At a time when hard-won rights and freedoms are under threat, having allies and advocates speaking up for York's diverse communities is more important than ever. Fiona walks the walk in this respect. She's worked closely with York Mosque and was very proud to have been asked to cut the ribbon at the opening of the new mosque a few years ago. She's been an advocate for the traveller community as a trustee of the Travellers' Trust in the city. Fiona has also been a member of the Human Rights and Equalities Board and is rightly proud of York's status as a city of sanctuary and as the UK's first human rights city. I know from personal experience that Fiona has been unstinting in her support for LGBT rights in York and jointly proposed a motion with former Councillor Neil Barnes in 2012 calling for Pride to be celebrated in York on an annual basis alongside the flying of the rainbow flag above the Mansion House. Fiona also worked with council officers and other agencies 10 years ago to secure Stonewall accreditation for the authority. Fiona has been a marshal on the York Pride Parade since its inception, and those of you who've been on the parade know that it isn't always an easy job keeping parade participants and others the right side of the line. I know that this year Fiona will find it a strange experience viewing the parade from the top of an open-top bus with her consort Jeff rather than at ground level. I know that Fiona will be very well supported by Jeff as her consort in the year ahead. Jeff was born and brought up in Dringhouses, and I very much hope to be able to welcome him and Fiona back to his old stomping ground. And I think Jeff's another Leeds United fan, so Councillor Stewart need have absolutely no worries about support for his team this coming weekend. I know that Fiona is very proud to have friends from both the Pride Committee and from York Mosque here today, alongside her family, to see her accept the huge honour of being inaugurated as the Sheriff of York. I very much look forward to seeing the impact that Fiona will undoubtedly make in her new role in the year ahead, and look forward to supporting her in her efforts. So it gives me great pleasure to second the nomination of Fiona Fitzpatrick as Sheriff of York for the new municipal year. Thank you.
All those in favour of the motion? That seems to be unanimous. I declare the motion carried, and I am delighted Fiona Fitzpatrick has been appointed as Sheriff of the City of York for the municipal year 2024-2025.
The Sheriff's Consorts will now exchange their chains of office. Sheriff Fiona Fitzpatrick will now make her declaration of acceptance of office.
I, Fiona Fitzpatrick, having been appointed to the office of Sheriff of the City of York, hereby declare that I take the said office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties thereof, according to the best of my judgment and ability.
The Sheriff will now take the oath of allegiance.
I, Fiona Fitzpatrick, Sheriff of the City of York, do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors, according to law, so help me God. Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor's Consort, Sheriff's Consort, Members of Council, Honorary Aldermen, distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen and children. I can't tell you how delighted I am to stand here today. As an adopted daughter of the city, it gives me huge honour to accept this role. I want to thank the outgoing Civic Party for all the help and support they've given us in preparation for this. I want to thank officers of the Council for all their help so far. And again, I want to echo the Lord Mayor in wishing Dawn Steele well. And I have to say, being Sheriff means I'm off the hook for chairing full Council. And having Dawn by the side of all the previous Lord Mayors who chaired that committee, I know how much Dawn has added. So thank you for that. I want to thank my family and friends, my son Todd, my daughter Helen, and my two daughter-in-laws who are here today, and my grandson Theo. I want to thank colleagues of all persuasions in the Council for the support I've had, both as a councillor and since I have stood down. I want to thank my other guests that are here from York Moss, from York Pride. I want to thank in particular Stuart Jarman, who is the chair of our fundraising committee, and the charities that he has lined up for us and helped support. I particularly want to thank my consort, Jeff Cousins. He's already kept me calm this morning, and I'm sure he'll do so throughout the whole of my term. So, again, I thank everybody for this huge honour. Thank you.
Item 4 of the agenda, the appointment of Deputy Lord Mayor. I move that Councillor Christopher Culwick be elected as Deputy Lord Mayor of the City of York for the municipal year 2024-2025. Councillor Keith Orrell will now second the motion.
Formally second, Lord Mayor.
All those in favour? That's unanimous. I declare the motion carried and that Councillor Christopher Culwick has been elected Deputy Lord Mayor for the municipal year 2024-2025.
The Deputy Lord Mayor will now make the Deputy Lord Mayor's declaration of acceptance of office.
I, Christopher Culwick, having been elected to the office of Deputy Lord Mayor of the City of York, hereby declare that I take the said office upon myself and will duly and faithfully fulfil the duties thereof, according to the best of my judgment and ability.
The Deputy Lord Mayor will now take the Deputy Lord Mayor's oath of allegiance.
I, Christopher Culwick, Deputy Lord Mayor of the City of York, do solemnly swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty King Charles III, his heirs and successors according to law, so help me God.
We now move to the appointment of the Under-Sheriff.
I have pleasure in naming Janet Looker as our Under-Sheriff and wish to express my thanks to her for undertaking the office.
We've now come to the presentation of badges of office. Councillor Ashley Mason will now propose a vote of thanks to the outgoing Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress.
Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor's Consort, Sheriff, Sheriff's Consort, Members of Council, Honorary Aldermen, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Following a successful apprenticeship in 2021 to 2022, Chris and Joy again took up the mantle of serving our great and ancient city as our Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress. They knew it would be tough, 7 days a week, filled with late nights and early mornings, but they went for it, and have again excelled at their dedication and enthusiasm for our civic life. Being their second year, they knew where and how they could make a difference, having a tangible grasp of the soft power the Office of Lord Mayor held locally, nationally and internationally. They appreciated firsthand the impact they could have and for charities and volunteers, and they knew how they could give it the best chance to continue and develop some of the themes from their first year. Chris has clearly worked extremely hard and integrated into all sectors of York, has become a true testament to the leadership as part of our city and respected by all leaders in society. They speak highly about him and have been keen to involve the Lord Mayoralty in their work. Chris certainly kept the office of Lord Mayor relevant, accessible and prominent. Moving further afield, he has used the office to keep connections between the City of London, hosting a 3-day official visit which focused on business and charity. He banged the drum for York being not only the second civic city in England, but having the largest insurance sector outside of the square mile. Having representatives from the City of London in the City of York shows the economic development potential that the Lord Mayor's office can yield, and I'm pleased the incoming Civic Party want to keep those connections alive to London. Building on these are the links Chris forged between the King's Royal Herald, the York Herald and his namesake city. Chris and Joy wanted to focus a great deal on highlighting the work of those supporting refugees who have come to York, devoting so much time to personally meeting and thanking volunteers. On the international stage, Chris used the extremely unique and irresistible pull of tea at the Mansion House to invite diplomats to visit, including ambassadors, consul generals and mayors. He knew what an opportunity this was to sell York and keep it high on the agenda of those with influence. And to round off his year, Chris led a civic visit supported by the Minster, Archbishop and business community to mark 100 years since the City of New York presented our city with the bronze plaque that says behind me, but over there. Testament to the Lord Mayor's power and how highly they are regarded across the world. Chris and Joy have had an ambitious, non-stop, back-to-back list of charity events, raising tens of thousands of pounds for Snappy and York Women's Counselling Service, harnessing the generosity of York's business community and institutions to support them. Their last event, the Lord Mayor's Ball here in this very building just 5 days ago, added another £9,000 to that pot. The outgoing Lady Mayoress deserves a special mention. Joy has again shown that she has been an active, diligent and caring member of the Civic Party, holding her own in advancing causes close to her heart, from recognising volunteers supporting those with poor mental health to highlighting and empowering women making their mark on our city. She's been instrumental in the success of the Civic Party and has shown that through the impact of their work. Lord Mayor, if you'll indulge me, I want to extend my best wishes to you, the Sheriff, and your consorts. As one leading figure in York put it, being Lord Mayor is unlike any other role a councillor or officer does. It's full-on, fast-paced, exciting, humbling, and very special. Your year marks a step change in our civic life, but I know that all are dedicated to making your time a success and impactful. You've got a great team and look forward to supporting you from the sidelines. Good luck and enjoy.
Councillor Michael Pavlovic will now formally second the motion.
Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor's consort, Sheriff, Sheriff's consort, Honorary Aldermen and Alderwomen, councillors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're nearly getting to the end. I have the great honour of being asked to second the vote of thanks to the Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress. And I've resisted the temptation to dust off the speech I gave 2 years ago, you'll be relieved to hear. But speaking with Chris about the highlights of this year, of which there are many, it's clear that among the most memorable were those which not only reflected his and Joy's personal beliefs, but also the best of what makes York such a great city. The welcome it gives to those who make York their home, who have often been through great hardship on their journey or in their home country. As a city of sanctuary, York has welcomed citizens from conflicts around the world, from Afghanistan to the Ukraine, from Hong Kong to Syria, and it welcomes thousands of students from around the world. The Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress have taken every opportunity to meet with them and to extend the hand of solidarity and support on behalf of us all. The events they've attended have been as diverse as the people themselves, from a refugee and asylum seeker football tournament to inviting the Afghan kitchen Yahala Matan, a social enterprise building dignity and confidence for asylum seekers and refugees, to cater for the dinner at her mansion house, for the Sheriff of London and the York Herald, a member of the royal household, and more recently to cater for an event at the mansion house welcoming the York Interfaith Group. Joy and Chris have also welcomed human rights defenders based at the City of York and hosted or attended countless events with our Chinese, Ukrainian, Sri Lankan and other communities through our city hub. They've celebrated Diwali and Iftar at the York Mosque and have welcomed the first rabbi for York in 800 years. They have taken a lead in York's response to events in the Middle East and Ukraine, always seeking to maintain understanding and goodwill between communities in York. Of course, whilst the majority of the hundreds of events that the Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress attend each year take place in York, as our first citizens, they are the embodiment of its history, its culture, values and ethos to the rest of the country and the world. And Chris was particularly proud not only to welcome a representation from Lviv in the Ukraine, but also to participate online in a conference in Lviv to stress our solidarity and support to its people. He also contributed to the conference in Lviv and very much hopes to be able to build on those connections in the coming years. As Lady Mayoress, Joy has played a vital part in the civic year, not only constantly working alongside Chris, but has taken the lead in celebrating the contribution of volunteers in mental health services on World Mental Health Day and in promoting International Women's Day. She's also taken the lead with a number of fundraising events. So as we welcome the latest recipient of this great honour, our current Lord Mayor, we thank you, Chris, thank you, Joy, and thank you to all the Civic Party for all you've done to maintain the best principles of your office and for embodying all that is great in this city of York. Thank you.
All those in favour, please show. That was unanimous, so the motion is carried.
The Lord Mayor will now present the outgoing Lord Mayor and Lady Mayoress with their badges of office.
Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor's Consort, Sheriff's Consort, Aldermen and women, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and young people, thank you. Thank you first to the very kind words spoken by Councillor Pavlovic and Councillor Mason. Let me just begin with a question. What does the new Sostran Gren shop in Nestgate, a bench on the bank of the River Foss in New Earswick, a sensory garden at Dringhouses Primary School, a student takeover week at York Theatre Royal, and the new community centre at York St John University, what do they all have in common? Well, Joy and I, and usually with the rest of the Civic Party, have cut ribbons at all of these, and many other openings, dedications and celebrations. But the Civic Year is not all about ribbon cutting. We've often been asked, especially in these last weeks, what are the highlights of the year? What are the standout moments? A question which is honestly impossible to answer. There have been so many wonderful experiences. How can one possibly compare the excitement of Lord Derrymore's primary school children as they welcome the Civic Party to their very own Yorkshire Day? Or compare an enthusiastic choir of children from Uganda singing and dancing their hearts out and literally bringing tears to our eyes with their personal stories when they performed at Archbishop's School? How does one compare hearing the stories of those who've been forced to leave their homes and make dangerous journeys, or the stories of those who finally achieve their goal of citizenship, or of a qualification, or of establishing a new business, or charity, or research centre? Every one of the hundreds of civic engagements which have populated the diary have been special to those who invited and welcomed the Civic Party. And this really is what matters. Recognising, thanking and celebrating the wonderful people of our city who do such astonishing things. However, if pressed, I would have to say the one standout moment for me was representing the City of York in our namesake city of New York earlier this month. And on behalf of the ancient city of York, presenting the Mayor of New York, Eric Adams, with a legistone produced by York Minster. Just as 100 years ago, here in this Guildhall, this bronze tablet was presented to the then Mayor of York, William Dobbie, out of interest the First Labour Lord Mayor of York, by the then Mayor of New York, with 100 delegates. Marking that centenary was such a tremendous privilege and honour. And working in partnership with our universities, with the Merchant Adventurers, with York Minster, with numerous businesses and organisations, demonstrated just how much can be achieved when we pull together to promote everything our incredible city has to offer. But the most important thing for me to say this morning is thank you. Thank you to our civic support team, the Mansion House team. Thank you to Judith, and, of course, a particular thank you on this day to Dawn. Thanks to those who have taken such good care of us through the year, and highlighting especially our two Richards, fondly referred to as Richard I and Richard II. Their contribution cannot be underestimated. And thank you to all the individuals, businesses and organisations that have kindly supported our charity appeal. Far too numerous to mention, but I will make a point of mentioning and thanking YO1 Radio for their invaluable support, and saying thank you to our wonderful and hard-working team of fundraisers. I want to say thank you to my ward colleagues, to Carol, Councillor Runciman, and to Keith, Councillor Orrell, the outgoing Deputy Lord Mayor, who has stepped in on a number of occasions, for which I've been very grateful. Thank you to our chaplains, to Liz Hassel, to Vicky Johnson. Thank you to our generous Under-Sheriff Karen and to Julian. And thank you so much to the outgoing Sheriff and her consort, Sue and Nigel. You could not have worked harder or have been more supportive right through the year, despite all the challenges of running your own businesses at the same time. I don't know how you've done it. And Joy, Lady Mayoress, what can I say? Thank you for your unstinting commitment and support throughout this journey, not just once, but twice. As you know full well, and I've said it before, I wouldn't and couldn't do it without you. Which I think finally just leaves me also to wish the very, very best for the next Civic Party. We know we hand over into very good and capable hands, and you know you will continue to have our full support. Thank you.
Councillor Paula Widdowson will now propose a vote of thanks to the outgoing Sheriff and Sheriff's Consort.
Always quick to get on my feet. Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor's Consort, Sheriff, Sheriff's Consort, Member of Council, Honorary Alderman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and the young guys in the audience. You're still hanging on in there, well done. I am delighted to take this opportunity to thank Sue Hunter for her hard work and dedication over the last 12 months. So where do we start? As we are all aware, Sue, as a sensitive, introverted person, took some persuasion to take on the sheriff's role, one of the oldest and most prestigious civic roles in the UK. It took some time, but when Sue overcame her innate shyness, she threw herself into the role with gusto. As sheriff, Sue attended several hundred events supporting the Lord Mayor and hosting many of her own. Sue has been fabulous at marrying the age-old traditions of this ancient role with her sparkle and modernity. There were many highlights, delivering memorable photographs and significant funds for the charities. My personal favourite was the Assizes of Ale. A beautiful, sun-drenched day with the Civic Party in front of the Mansion House and local residents and tourists eagerly inspecting the stocks placed in St Helens Square. Sue had engineered for the Sheriff's Consort to be placed in the stocks and pelted with sponges. and after a while she gamely followed suit, much to the amusement of the crowds. Later on that day, Sue could be found in numerous hostelries with her silver tankard, shaking cash out of unsuspecting drinkers' pockets. Definitely a highwayman in the making. I know Sue has enjoyed her year, and I equally know that the passion, drive and commitment she has shown has delighted the York residents and visitors alike, all the while generating significant funds for her charities. Finally, Sue, I and all the council would like to thank you for your enthusiasm, commitment and hard work. Once again, many thanks and well done for a fabulous year.
Councillor Andrew Waller will now formally second the motion.
Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor's Consort, Sheriff, Sheriff's Consort, Members of Council, Honorary Aldermen, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen and young people. I'm delighted to second the vote of thanks to outgoing Sheriff Sue Hunter. She is certainly someone who values tradition and appreciates the role that she has performed. Throughout the year, she's demonstrated a commitment to the role and utilised the role to recognise the many organisations and people who make this city a great place to live. Like the previous speaker, I appreciated the assize of ale and bread, which was a wonderful costumed event-raising event for charity. And I appreciate that in the run-up, Sue was particularly keen to have a Halloween fundraising event, which duly took place. Grounded as being a lifelong Ayrsham resident and local business owner, there is little that gets past Sue. And I dread to think how many people have heard the economic phrase, "How much?" From Sue through the year, but all for a good cause. Volunteering has been important for many years to Sue, and she's devoted a large amount of time during the year to meeting people and taking great interest in the work that they do for the city and recognising their vital role in York. And having the job of Sheriff has been an enormous joy, but not out of a bragging or blogging sense, not for straight-talking Sue, in particular supporting her nominated charity, Snappy, in York Women's Counselling, where she takes particular interest. On behalf of the city, I would also like to put on record thanks to Nige, who has been a wonderful Sheriff's Consort, supportive and always listening to Sue's suggestions on how things might be improved. During the year, Sue has brought an interest in floral features and a great deal of elegance into the work of the Civic Party and their events. And on a personal note, I would like to thank Sue for all her work, guidance and encouragement. I so move.
All those in favour, please show.
Unanimous, Lord Mayor.
Again, unanimous. The motion is carried.
The Lord Mayor will now present the outgoing Sheriff and Sheriff's Consort with their badges of office.
This is the final speech, I believe. Lord Mayor, Lord Mayor's Consort, Sheriff, Sheriff's Consort, members of the Council, honorary aldermen, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, young children, friends. What a year, and where has this time gone? It's hard to believe I was standing here. Well, I wasn't actually in here last year, but I was thanking Chris for giving me the honour and the privilege of serving in this long-held, prestigious post of the Sheriff of York. I love York, and like the Lord Mayor, I was born here, I grew up here, and I've made my life here. York is a special place, full of traditions and customs that stretch back over many centuries, and I'm humbled to have been able to play my small part in the history of this city. York, as we know, is the only city outside of London to have a Right Honourable Lord Mayor. And you may not know this, but there are only 15 sheriffs left across the country, of which I've had the privilege of being one. I've seen firsthand the essential role an active and visible civic party has in the life and the promotion of our great city. When the Lord Mayor and I, along with our consorts, attended functions in our chains, robes and finery, I have seen the joy we have brought both to young and old, citizens and tourists alike. Having the civic party attend events brings with it a feeling of history and occasion. Indeed, I remember my 44-year-old son, and he still remembers the delight he felt when he was 10 years old and a previous Lord Mayor, formerly Councillor Anne Reid, awarded him with a certificate in a poetry competition. He remembers the moment being inspiring. What he doesn't like remembering is that he actually came second in the competition. It is essential that we continue with the traditions and the function of the civic party, because once they've gone, they will not come back, and that will be a dishonour to York's heritage. I would like to give my thanks to Chris and Joy for having this marvellous opportunity. We've all worked very hard to deliver together, and we've made a really great team, or I think we've made a great team. And part of that team has been Nigel, my consort, who has remained steadfast at my side. I have to admit he was quite reluctant to take on this role at first, but he threw all his time and energy into the job. And thanks again to Nigel, because anybody who knows me, I'm quite a lot to put up with. My sincere thanks to my Undersheriff Karen Phoebe on taking part, along with the rest of the Civic Party. She is a true friend and a supporter, and has been exceptional and an exemplary fundraiser for our two charities. Thank you. Thank you to our guilds. A lot of their work goes unrecognised. We've got quite a few guilds, and they actually took us under their wing, and they made Nigel and myself very, very welcome. And I'm proud to say that I am a member of one of the guilds now. My thanks also go to the York Guard. They can't hear me. I can see them actually lining up, so I'll speed along a bit. And the York Wait, because they do support greatly the Civic Party, but also the city. And for the tourists to see those when we're parading, it's absolutely fantastic. I'd also like to thank my chaplain, Liz Hassel. It's been fabulous working alongside you, and we've had many, many good chats and fun along the way. My final thanks go to the two charities that we chose to support during our civic year. They are Snappy and York Women's Counselling, who have been very supportive and hard-working throughout, because as fundraising is not easy, and we know it's getting more and more difficult, because people don't have the cash now, and they're not always wanting to put the cards to these card machines. But we've had the generosity of our residents, and I don't know the final total, but I do believe we've raised quite a substantial amount of money for both organisations. Over the last 12 months as well, I've learnt quite a lot of the history of York, even though I've lived here for quite a few years. The Mansion House and the vital role the Civic Party plays, but also the challenges that many of our residents face and the unsung heroes who volunteer across our city. As the Lord Mayor mentioned, we've had so many highlights, and there have been many and varied. We've had pleasures of being invited to schools, charities, businesses, both new and old, nursing homes, churches, synagogues, mosques and airfields. The list goes on, but everywhere that we went, we were given the warmest of welcomes. We've travelled by DN1, travelled atop the Pride bus in front of the York Pride Parade. We've marched with the Army and the city judges. We've ridden on a train named after our lovely York veteran Ken Cook. And I even at one point went back to my teenage years, having had a ride on the back of a Vespa scooter. Unfortunately, I got on okay, but my agility was not as good on the dismount, and shall I say it was a bit problematic, and I do believe there's a video, but I hope it doesn't go on Instagram. As according to tradition as Sheriff, I did check the quality of the city's ale and the bread during the Sheriff's Assize, and we raised quite a lot of money for our charities. I allowed gamblers and unruly folk into the city for the Christmas ridings, following a huge and rumbus parade around the city, and it attracted lots of attention from tourists and locals alike. And the Lord Mayor and I did both have wet sponges thrown in our face outside the Mansion House. Not recommended, but it was a bit of fun. And finally, to end, I would like to say that this has been a wonderful journey. It's been the pleasure of my life to serve as Sheriff and to promote our wonderful city. I feel privileged for having the honour of wearing the historical chains and the robes. And yes, of course, I did have my own fancy footwear, which I think I've become known for. But I hope I did York proud. Thank you.
We now come to the formal business of the meeting, namely the appointment of a council leader and the allocation of places and councillors to committees and other bodies for 2024-25, as well as the proportionate allocation of council motions. All the details of proposed appointments are shown in the published papers for the meeting. In addition, some minor updates to membership of bodies have been circulated to members at the Guildhall today and made publicly available prior to the meeting. Before I ask for nominations to the position of council leader, I would like council to note that we have some apologies for today's meeting from councillors Smalley, Wan and Waters. Can I please ask for nominations to the position of council leader?
Proposal to nominate Councillor Claire Douglas, Lord Mayor.
Do I have a seconder for that nomination, please? Thank you. Can I see a show of hands for that nomination? So does that. Are there any against? Any abstentions? The nomination of Councillor Claire Douglas is therefore carried, and she is duly appointed as the elected leader of the City of York Council for 2024-25. Congratulations to Councillor Douglas. I will now ask her to move the remaining formal business for the allocation of places and members to committees and other bodies for 2024-25, and to move the recommendations in the monitoring officer's report to council in full, as set out in the published papers and updated in the published supplementary agenda. Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Kilbert? Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on the motion? Thank you, members. I will now move to a vote. Could all those wishing to vote for the motion please show your hands now? Could all those wishing to vote against the motion please show your hands now? Could all those wishing to abstain please show your hands now? Thank you, members. The motion is carried. There being no further business for the meeting, I now declare the meeting closed.